Hi, thanks for joining me today. Let's paint this fun seashell. It's a conch shell and it's going to be pink on the inside and some brownish yellows on the outside. It's going to be a fun painting. So what I did was I had the tracer and I traced it onto, these are little watercolor postcards, which are really fun. So let's say I was on vacation and I wanted to paint a little postcard to send to someone. I would use this and I'd bring a little paint set and just paint something very simple. Now the colors I'm going to use are yellow ochre, and I'm going to use some permanent rose, but I'm going to be using a lot of water. This brush is one of my favorite brushes. If you've watched me before, you know it's quite old and it's kind of worn out, but I love it. It's very soft. So I'm going to start with a light wash of a little bit of yellow ochre. Now I always bring a piece of paper that I could test my colors on. Now this is a little too yellow. I'm going to add a little bit of pink in here. Okay, I like that color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out just by painting very light wash the entire shell. And I've got quite a bit of water on here on my brush so that I can cover most of the shell. Now with watercolor, we don't use white very often. Instead, we keep our paper white where we don't want color. So what I'm going to do is this shell tends to have kind of like stripes going across it. So I'm just going to paint across with this color and leave some of the white showing. And that way I don't have to worry about figuring out how to put white in there. I'm just leaving parts of it white. Okay. So that's step number one. Now step number two, I'm going to put a little bit of a warm gray color in here where there would be a shadow. So that's Payne's gray is what I'm going to use. Just a tiny bit with water. And I'm just going to come in like where the shadows would be. Now I do like to have a paper towel close by. So if I find that my brush feels a little wet, I just tap it with the paper towel or a rag. And there's just a little bit of shadow here with the gray. Do remember that with watercolor, things tend to dry a little lighter, so don't worry if it looks too dark. And another thing to remember is after you paint something, if you don't like it, the art fairy will come that night and fix it for you. And you'll like it the next day or a few days later. I have had paintings that I just think are so awful, and I'll put them away in a drawer or somewhere under the bed. And then I go back and look at it like a few weeks later and I go, why didn't I like it? It's pretty good. Okay, so we've got some shadows there. I think we'll put a little shadow in here. And I am looking at a picture of what I'm painting. Now what I do is I have my Etsy shop where you can purchase, I've got new seashells and seabirds on there, and they come with a reference photo, and then you get a tracer, and then you get directions, step-by-step directions. And I keep adding more and more watercolors on there. Watercolor is my first love. I do paint with acrylic as well, but I do really like watercolor. So that's step two. So let's let this dry and then we'll work on step three. Okay, step three, we're going to use some pretty pink color. Permanent rose is what I'm using, and I'm using a lot of water. See my water here? There we go. Clean off the brush, wipe it off on the paper towel, add some of that pretty pink, see if it's too dark. I kind of like that. So I'm going to do the inside of the shell, which is here. I do want to leave a little bit of white. Now I'm thinking, even though permanent rose is the color, I think it's a little too pink. I want to add a little bit of yellow to it just to kind of make it less bubblegum pink. So I'm adding a little bit of yellow in there, that color. And I'm just going to bring this through down along here. This brush, see how I like it? It kind of shapes where I'm going. It kind of moves. If I want it flat, I can flatten it a little and get lines with it. Really, you don't need a lot of brushes. You just have to find one that you really like. I have a lot more brushes, but this is my favorite. Okay, and let's add a little more water and the color here with a little bit of that yellow, so it's not quite as bright. And we're going to come in here. The other thing with watercolor, what you can do is put layers. You let it dry and come back. So if this looks really light, especially after it dries, I'm not going to worry about it. I can do what's called glazing. Glazing is when you come in after it's dry and add more color. And you go right over what you have there. Okay, so this, I don't like the hard line. So I'm cleaning off my brush and drying it a little, and I'm going to come in and soften that with water before it dries. So I'm softening it because I don't want a harsh line. And I'm just going to soften it, and then I'm going to add a little of that color we used earlier on the shell, the little beige color. And I'm going to come in here with that color. And around here. It's like a light beige. Okay, and I still see a little bit of a line there that I want to get rid of. I'm just going to come in a little more of that color and along the outer shell. Okay, and then what I need to do is do a darker, deepest color in here to give it some depth. So I'm going to use an alizarin crimson in here. I love it when you try to say a word and it's like just not coming out right. Okay, so there we go. So that's a little darker. Now again, I've got the colors bleeding, which is kind of cool with watercolor. But if you don't want that to happen, you can come in with a little more color and just kind of spread it around so that you get rid of that. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to go and dry this and see how it looks. We'll probably be putting a glaze over it. I would like to have a little more white here. Sometimes I like to use this brush that's a little harder when I want to pull some paint off. Do you see how I pulled that off? I'm going to take my rag, wipe off my brush, and pull that off so I've got a white highlight here before it dries. That way I've got that highlight. Okay, and here it's bleeding in. That's okay. I'm going to let it dry. I'm going to come back after I dry it, and I'm going to come with the darker color to get more of a shadow there. So I used a craft tool to dry this. I like using it because it doesn't blow like a hairdryer and it dries things really fast, the watercolor. And I will put a link to that. I got it on Amazon. It wasn't very expensive. And you might want to get one of those if you're painting with watercolor so you can dry things quickly. Okay, let's go back to that darker red color and let's work on this shadow a little more. Let's see, let me get some of that darker red. And that looks pretty good. Now the brush is pretty wet. I don't really want it that wet. So I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm going to hold it right there. Do you see how that's coming? The water's coming off there. So now it's not as wet and I do want a little more color. So let's go into this shadow. There we go. It's almost like here, there, up here. There we go. Now, once again, there's this harsh line. I don't want that. I do want this shadow to be darker, a little darker in here. And then I quickly have to blend this so we don't have that. Clean off my brush. You hear me cleaning it? It's wet, but not soaking wet. And I've got to pull some of this color off. And right here. Okay. So there we go again. Blend, blend, blend. But that's better than having a line. Okay, that looks pretty good. I don't know about this here. I'm not too happy with that. There we go. That looks better. Okay, and then here, there's still this line here, but I want to add a little of that brownish color in here. Instead of having it too pink, a little more pink. And then we want to clean off the brush, wipe it off, and get, this is mostly just water. Because remember, I wanted that to be white. So I'm going to leave it like that, and we'll let that dry. Okay, well that's drying. Let's work on the rest of the seashell. I kind of like that. Okay. All right, the rest of the shell, we're going to do some deeper shadows. We're going to mix a little bit of the Payne's Gray. Very light Payne's Gray in here. And let's mix it with a little bit of the brown. So we've got a brownish, dark brown color. Let's see how that looks. There we go. And I don't want my brush too wet. Okay, I've got to come in. We've got lines here. And we'll put some shadows in. Some shadow. And then we've got to go and paint more of these lines across, a little darker. So the seashells, they tend to be a little, they look like they'd be really simple, but they're kind of, there's a lot of little details to them that you get to play with. We've got some lines up here going across. There we go. Now up here, I should have a little darker area right here. It's like a shadow. There we go. And then down here, we're going to have it sitting on a shadow. And the reason that I don't want it just floating in space is because I like to have things, my paintings, on something. So even if it's just a shadow, it just tends to anchor them so they don't just sit there floating away. So I'm just putting a shadow here with brown and the Payne's Gray. And that way it's anchored. Okay. Now there's a lot more you could do to it, but I basically wanted to show you some techniques. See how nice this is drying? We could come back and do another glaze on here. And by glazing, I mean we're just going to come in with some color and just cover it with more color. And that's called glazing. Once it's dry, you're coming in with more color. Now I don't want to put the pink here. I'm going to put a little more of that beige color that we made here, but I want to leave that part white. So I'm cleaning my brush, going like this again to keep part of it white. I'm going to do the outer edge a little darker so we can see the edge of the shell. Now, I don't mind when pencil lines show on my watercolor. Some people do. They don't like that. I think it looks fine. One time I went to an art gallery and there was watercolor paintings and all the lines were showing from the pencil marks. It was one of Tony Bennett's exhibits. He used to paint with watercolor. And I thought, well, if he can do it, I can do it. Anyway, so there we have our shell, and I hope you had fun painting along with me. Please leave a like and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be painting a lot more things. I did paint this seagull, and that's going to be a short video, although I might do a long one also. And I just finished painting another little bird. It's let's see, I have it here somewhere. My little sandpiper, I don't know where she went. But let me see if I can find it. Here we go, the sandpiper. That was really fun to paint. So I've got pelicans to paint. I've got starfish, different shells, sand dollars, and hope you join me. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Please leave a like and subscribe to my channel and keep watching for more videos as I put them out every week.